Now here, Avon is, what, about 25 miles from the city of Rochester? But even parts of Avon don't have broadband, good broadband, or any broadband. Many of our villages have it. I guess, supervisor, in the village, just about everyone has broadband.
Yes.
But you go into the more rural areas, you don't. And every one of the 17 towns in Livingston County is not completely wired for broadband. Now, broadband is a necessity these days. You can't locate companies here, as Eric mentioned. I always try to locate companies here. Keep an eye on the Kraft, now Heinz plant. We hope they're going to employ more people soon. Now that they've finished, we've gotten the plant in Steuben County done, but they've kept their employees instead of closing. What is it, about 400?
Yes.
Yeah, about 400 employees here making, I think it is, Lunchables and Cool Whip. Is that right?
Yep.
Always looking for jobs here. But companies like to locate where there's the best broadband. And broadband in the home is a necessity because so many employees do work from home. If you can't get it and you're living off the main line, that's bad. Schools, a lot of the kids do work on their computers. They need good broadband. And just living. You want to get movies, you want to get all the things that you can these days. If you don't have broadband, it's a real problem. And so in many of about a quarter of all the residents of New York State, mostly in the more rural parts of our state, do not get broadband, or they don't get really good broadband, okay? So I believe we should try to get broadband in every home, and I'll get to that in a minute. But why am I here today? Well, there's a threat, because the FCC, the Federal Communications Commission, is planning to downgrade the minimum standard of high-quality internet service and treat lower speed mobile broadband as okay for rural areas. By their standards, you couldn't get movies, you couldn't even do email rapidly. And to create two classes of broadband, one for urban America and suburban America, one for the outer suburbs and for rural America, is just not fair to rural America, is not fair to our outer suburbs. The FCC established a definition that was good for everybody, but now they're hoping to downgrade it from 4 megabits a second to 25 megabits a second. That's for download speeds, and upload speeds would go from 1 megabit per second to 3. And that will hurt more than 55 million Americans, 3 or 4 million New Yorkers who don't have that access. So the FCC is making a real mistake here. They would define, I had it wrong before, here's what they do now. They define US broadband as 10 megabits per second download and 1 megabit per second upload. That's less than half the 25 megabits a second and 3 megabits. So this would hurt Livingston County economic development. It would hurt people just in terms of their lifestyles, and it is unfair. So I am urging the FCC and I'm starting a campaign to prevent them from doing this. You say, well, but then that prevents it from being downgraded. What should we do? Well, here's what I believe. Franklin Roosevelt in the 1930s said every rural home should get electricity. A lot of rural homes didn't have it. And in the 30s, electricity had become a necessity. We should do the same thing on broadband. We should say that every rural home is entitled to broadband at the same speed and level as every urban home. And this affects not just rural, but a lot of suburban, outer suburb communities. You won't find this in Henrietta, but you might find it in the town of Sweden, I don't know, in Monroe County, but the outer suburbs. And so, excuse me, that would mean there would be some subsidy to the companies to do the extra mile. We have good trunk routes of broadband, excuse me. We have good trunk routes of broadband here in Livingston County, but it's not economically feasible for the companies to go to houses that are rural. So there'd be a small subsidy for that. But the benefits would far and away outweigh that, just as Rural Electrification Administration gave a subsidy to rural areas to get electricity. And if we could do that, economic development would get even better here in Livingston County. We're doing pretty well, but we could always do better. And in many of our other counties, you go further out, you go to Allegheny County, you go to Steuben County, you go to parts of Orleans and Genesee County, it's even worse because they're more rural and they're further away, excuse me, from cities like Rochester. And so this is what we ought to do. I am pledging to, this is going to be something that we are going to try to get in the budget that we're doing before Christmas. I think it will have broad bipartisan support, and it will be a real shot in the arm for rural America. We cannot have two, thank you very much. We cannot have two classes of broadband, and we cannot have large parts of America being without broadband. And so, to make sure this happens, by telling the FCC they can't have two standards, one for rural America, one for urban America, and to provide some subsidy to help every home get broadband at a reasonable rate, makes eminent sense for America. This is what we should be doing. And by the way, it'll create jobs because you'll need people to wire the houses. So this is a win-win-win. Win for the homes that get it, win for jobs in rural America, and a win for just folks who want the best broadband access they can get.